Welcome to Kev's Travel Stories. Each week I'll be bringing you a story from the weird and wonderful world of travel, a world that can change the way you see life and love and even the way we find meaning. Places that are iconic and sometimes surprising and even terrifying. So sit back and enjoy while we go on a magical mystery tour together. Welcome to Kevin's Travel Stories, and I'm going to start off by asking you a question. Have you ever been spontaneous? Have you ever, on your travels, suddenly decided to do something that you'd not planned to do? Well, I recently found myself walking through London on a beautiful spring day with my old friend Paul. And we decided on the spur of the moment, as we stood looking at the pelicans on St. James's Park, swimming there and looking resplendent, we decided we would turn our backs and go into the Churchill War Rooms. Now, like many people in London, we thought that the huge monolithic building, which is on the side of the Mall, just down from Trafalgar Square, covered in green ivy, were the famous war rooms. We were wrong. And it took us a small diversion via the use of Google Maps to find it. It's down further. It's on the steps where the Foreign Office is, and you'll see a new, very smart-looking entrance with a sort of gun enamel canopy that says Churchill War Rooms, and that's where you go. Now, as we just spontaneously decided to visit this, because we were killing time before we went to see a friend's art exhibition, we were just rocked up. It does say you should book online. It does say it's going to be crowded. We saw no crowds. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We meandered in, no queues. We went up to the ladies on the desk and we said, "Can we come in?" And they said, "Please do." Now, there's a codicil here. It is quite expensive. It can be up to €47, depending on the time you visit. That's 39 English sterling pounds. It's not cheap. There's no doubt about it. There are varying prices for varying different times and various different concessions. Just consult the website. But it's not cheap. I think we could agree on that, and certainly myself and Paul agreed that it was costly. So we had to get our value, and we had 2 hours till the close, and we had 2 hours spare. So we decided to jump in and do it. And Paul very kindly, as I'd come over, he guested me the ticket, and in we went. Now, the first thing you do is you take a little audio cassette, you put this around your neck, you put on your earphones, and you have a fantastic guide. It's very simple, and like most of these audio guides, excellent. And what you do is you really basically have 2 places to visit. Let me take anybody who's unaware of what the Churchill War Rooms are back in time. A very good starting point would be the movie The Darkest Hour, for which Gary Oldman won an Oscar for portraying Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was a fascinating character, controversial character in many ways, particularly if you're not from the United Kingdom. He would have generally now a very high level of admiration, but he was involved in campaigns like Gallipoli and the Irish problem and Palestine, and historians now would have maybe a more complex take on. But certainly, I don't think you can doubt it, that he is responsible mainly as one individual in making the war with Adolf Hitler successful, almost single-handedly, though historians again will argue as to his exact contribution. He did stand up, and his speeches and persona really represent the British bulldog spirit. And as someone who grew up, and my father fought under Churchill in the Merchant Navy, it is quite moving to go to these war rooms because, as the movie shows, this was the place that while London was bombed by the Luftwaffe, the War Cabinet continued the very difficult task of organising the Dunkirk expedition, which was evacuated, and then the 5-year battle to defeat Nazism, which went through many twists and turns and ups and downs, and finally was successful. And during this time, the nub of the UK and the Allies' fight was found in these very claustrophobic rooms, built under mounds and layers of concrete and steel. This is a building that was created in 1938 when the threat of war was ever growing, and it was very clever the way they did it. They had to put in special pumps because it was below the level of the River Thames, which is just nearby, and they had no toilets. So you can imagine what it was like. They had those old cisterns where you'd have the portable loo and the chemicals that were needed to keep the place sanitized. And you can imagine, even today, after about an hour down there, you start getting a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, and this is with air conditioning and everything's modern and the lighting's wonderful. But back then, when it was absolutely crammed with civilians and military and the great and the good of the land, from the Prime Minister Winston Churchill down, they all stayed here for hours on end, plotting the fight against Hitler and Nazi Germany. So it is a resplendent place. And what's more, this building was literally abandoned after the fall of Japan in 1945. And it was very soon after that efforts were made to turn it into a museum. So what you see is pretty much the state it was left in when the last civilian and their military counterparts walked out to victory. So let's just give you a sense of what you're going to experience going to the Churchill War Rooms. Well, you're going to see very mundane stuff, like where the loos were. You're going to see the small little rooms, and they're warrens. And even Churchill's private quarters is no more than a bed, a very simple bed, a table, a telephone. You'll see where he recorded his speeches to the British people and the further empire and the Americas, where he took calls with Roosevelt, where he talked to the leaders around the world, including Stalin. You'll see the rooms where the cabinet met. You will see the map rooms where they're still there. You can actually see the little pins that showed the advance of the Allies as they entered into Germany. If you're interested in history, and if you're interested in the import of history, it's an absolutely fantastic place and a really wonderful experience. And it's sort of two exhibitions wrapped into one, because there is actually a separate life of Churchill, which is fascinating, taking him from his birth in Blenheim Palace all the way through to his death. And here, a little bit of personal history there. When he died, he was laid in state in the halls of Westminster, and my father, I think I was 13 at the time, it's 1965, I was taken up and we stood in line for many hours and we walked past Churchill. So I have a personal connection, which was quite poignant when I actually remembered this and remembered how my father had been under the command of Churchill and 3 times had been in a lifeboat that had been torpedoed and had been set adrift in the Atlantic. So it was memorable. It's really fascinating because you actually get to see how the ceiling is structured, this huge tons of concrete, reinforced concrete. They've exposed parts so you can see the way that it's constructed to resist bombs that fell on London. And then even more dangerously, the V2 rockets that came over and indiscriminately fell. And though Churchill hated staying overnight in the war rooms because it had no bath, and Churchill famously loved having a bath in 10 Downing Street where you could have a cigar, you could have some very good brandy. So he only stayed in total 3 nights. There was a tunnel which you can see that leads right back to 10 Downing Street, and there he would famously lose his personal minders and go up and look out at the live bombing while he sucked on his cigar and threw back his champagne or brandy. So all in all, a fascinating insight. I have to say that myself and Paul were so delighted to get out of the place after 2 hours. But can you imagine? Some of the people there had to work 24, 48 hours shifts. They had to have a special weather forecast showing them what the weather was like outside. Did they need to take out a brolly? Did they need to take out warm clothing? Because they'd have no idea what was going on above ground. And sometimes they come out to see the place burning literally above them and around them. So all in all, it's expensive, but I think if you can afford it and you can afford 2 hours, schlep along to the Churchill War Rooms just beside the Horse Guards Parade and enjoy a real slice of history. And I really would finish this little podcast by saying sometimes it is right to follow your nose. Sometimes it is right to be completely spontaneous and do something like myself and Paul did, which was, let's go and see, let's go and try it out. What have we got to lose? Well, we lost nothing and we gained a lot. So follow your nose and enjoy your travels.